Good afternoon, and thank you to you all online and here in the room for joining us for this special celebration of a wonderful, wonderful person who is our dad. And I speak on behalf of Dawn and myself this afternoon, and it's a great privilege to do so. Dad would first of all want me to thank you, Pastor Arnott, for not only helping us with the arrangements for the service, but for being a wonderful pastor to him through the years, as you've mentioned, back 27 years, for your faithful support and care for him pastorally. And I know that he respected and regarded you greatly, so thank you very much for that. And today for the service, I just want to thank Chris and Nathan for all the technical side of things, and James for playing. Dad loved music, and we've sung with great gusto this afternoon, and that's been a real joy to us as well. And you'll be glad to know that at the end of the service, not only is there tea and coffee and some cake, but there are cold drinks. Dad loved the heat. Dad loved the sunshine, so I do apologise for the warm weather today, but I can see his bald head glowing with a suntan right before my eyes this afternoon. I also want to thank the bearers who carried Dad in today. You might not know or recognise who they were. One of them is my husband, Glenn. The other is John, Dawn's husband, and then my cousin Paul and Myrion, my cousin Joanna's husband, so Uncle John and Uncle David's son and son-in-law respectively, and then my dad's two grandsons. He had two grandsons and four granddaughters, and so today you have done a great job and a beautiful thing to carry in Bamper, as they affectionately called him. Two of the other granddaughters are here today, Natasha and Lois, that's Dawn's beautiful girls. And then the other two daughters are together watching the live stream in Canada. Bethany, our eldest daughter, lives there, married there, and they are watching the live stream together, Bethany and Rebecca, and we are thinking of them as they are thinking of us. I need to tell you this, 6 grandchildren. Your Bamper would want you to know this too, how incredibly proud he is of the 6 of you, not just for any academic achievements, not just for amazing things that you've been able to do with your lives so far and more to come, but he would be super proud of you because of your kindness, for working hard and just being just lovely, lovely family members. Your Bamper would want me to say to you, he's super proud of you. And so also now we've been blessed with 3 great-grandchildren. Young Judah out in Canada was born 1 week after Dad passed away, so he never got to meet him, but family life will continue, and our dad and granddad and great-granddad will never be forgotten. So when I asked Dawn, did she want to come and do this tribute, or would you like me to do it, you can guess what her answer might have been. And so she nominated me. She said, you are more comfortable up there. You're just like Dad. You're just like Dad. And I think, do you know what? If I could be just like Dad, I would be really happy. It's not difficult to stand up here and say these words, because it is not difficult to honour a dad like we had. It's not difficult to follow that commandment that says honour your father and mother. And so today, it's difficult to stand here in one way, and it's not difficult to share any of these words, because honouring our parents was a very easy thing to do. Our dad, as some of you will well know, was a people person. He was a natural entertainer. He was hilarious and sometimes embarrassing. He was a phenomenal storyteller. He was a leader, head and shoulders above others at times, and he was an organizer. Sometimes he was a bit chaotic, but he was a brilliant organizer. He was a fantastic communicator. He could take a story about, let's say, communication, and say that story to a group of young children, as he used to do through the length and breadth of South Wales in children's meetings with his accordion, storytelling and telling people about Jesus and the Christian faith. He could relate a story to young children. He could speak to a Rotary Club organisation. He could preach in church. He could train in his role in industry for 36 years, working in BP Chemicals. He was involved in training and personnel and then community relations. And he could communicate anything. You tell me the crowd, you tell me who my audience is, and I will package something worthwhile for that audience. That is the truth. He was funny. He was kind. He was generous. This is the dad that we have no difficulty at all in honouring this afternoon. And as my uncles, my dad's brothers have already mentioned today, for the last 8 years, Dad has had Alzheimer's, and that's been a great heartache to all of us as a family as we have watched Dad decline. When Dad was quite poorly towards the end of his life, one day Dawn and I were visiting together, and I said to Dawn, "Look at his hands. Look at his hands, Dawn." And at that moment, his hands were limp beside him, smooth fingers, no blisters, no cuts. They hadn't done hard work for a long time. Look at his hands, and we relayed back and forth to each other. Think of the things that those hands have done through the years, because today we're reflecting on 83 years and a whole lifetime of Dad. With that hand, he shook the hand of Her Majesty the Queen when he received his MBE medal. He says that the Queen's hand was small. He recalled that to us. 1993, that happened. With that hand, he could drive anything, any car, any vehicle. He even learned to drive the bus so that he could drive us Sunday school children and mystery trips and adventures galore. He could drive anything. He taught Dawn and I to drive. We've got some hair-raising stories, especially when he taught me to drive, and I landed up on top of a roundabout in Neath Abbey. And it felt like 45 degrees. It probably was 10 degrees. But for effect for the story today, I'll say we were dangling at 45 degrees because Dad was also prone to exaggeration sometimes too, for effect. And so he taught us both to drive, and we passed our driving test first time. He drove lots of different vehicles, and he loved his cars. With his hands, he took lovely photographs. With his hands, he could fix and mend anything. He could make anything. I remember him making Dawn a doll's house. He could just make and mend and fix anything. With those hands, he played his piano accordion. Who remembers him playing his piano accordion and bringing so much joy? I remember one time going carol singing to an elderly lady when we lived in the Skewing area, and he put a lit candle on top of his top hat. I go, no, there was no health and safety back in the day. A lit candle, and we went into this lady's house, and it was going great. He was playing his accordion with great gusto until this lady's Christmas decorations caught fire. And this lady, who was losing, a very old lady, elderly lady, she was going, ooh, 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 ooh. And that made Dad play his accordion all the louder because he thought she was loving the singing. And then we just smelt smoke, and these tissue decorations were fully ablaze. And we all survived to tell the tale. With his hands, he would welcome and encourage. My dad wasn't a huge hugger, but he would pat you on the back and he would put his arm around you, and he certainly wasn't lacking in love. In his hands, we as daughters and grandchildren have seen him with his Bible and his hymn book. We have seen him with his hands do tricks and do clever things. He used to do a tablecloth trick, stack a table up with old china, or my mum's old china, stack it up, and then all of a sudden build up the room. He'd have you hanging on every word. Then he would pull the cloth, and all the china would drop, and not one bit of it was broken. And my mum would be happy. He'd bring the china back home so that we could eat our food. In his hand, he would always have a fountain pen. In his hand, he was forever writing a letter of thanks, or a letter speaking up for someone where there was some injustice. Dad didn't like injustice. He liked integrity and he liked truth, and he used to write letters. He stood up for the underdog. With his hands, he also was very generous to the poor. I remember when Glenn and I were in Zambia living, we were youth leaders of this very church back in the day when we were newly married, and we went to Zambia for a couple of years, and my parents came out to visit. We took my parents to a very poor family who had invited us for a cup of tea, and this family lived in one room, and while my dad stood there in his hand holding this cup of tea, I could see tears welling up in his eyes, and I could see his lip quivering. And as we walked home, he says, I must do something for the poor people of this nation. What can I do? What can I do? And I said, well, we've got friends coming out from Denmark who want to start an orphanage. Why don't you fundraise for them? And he did. He called it Kaniki Challenge. He went to every single senior school in the Neath Talbot borough, challenged every child, thousands of school children, to raise £1. And over a period of time, he raised £25,000, and BP head office in London match funded it. And there are buildings today in Jabalani Children's Village that are simply as a result of the generous hand. The hand that held that cup of tea was inspired to reach out to this community in Zambia. With his hand, he used storytelling with objects and different things. He could relate anything, as I mentioned earlier on. I remember him doing children's meetings, and he used to have this brown box with a lid, and he would get the boys and girls to say, what's in the box? It'll hurt you. It really hurts. What is inside? You be careful. And he'd have this great big leather glove, and don't go in that box. It will absolutely hurt you. And you had to guess what was in the box. Is it a snake? No. Is it a tarantula? No. All like that. And it ended up being a stingy nettle. And then he would tell you the story about getting stung and then getting soothed. And he was just a brilliant communicator right across the board. He had very transferable skills within church and in industry and with children's ministry, and wherever he went, he had a wonderful skill set that was very transferable. But for Dawn and I today, all of the wonderful things that he has done for us, the most special thing that he did was in those hands he held us. He held us as babies. He held us as toddlers. I remember the day that Dawn was born, 27th of January 1972. We are 3 years and 5 days apart. I remember going to Morriston Hospital, and I remember going to meet my baby sister, and I really am glad that I was blessed with a wonderful baby sister, and we do this journey of life so beautifully together. With Dad's hands, he has guided us from babies to toddlers to teenagers to adults, and his wisdom will continue to still guide us for the rest of our days. So to sum up our dad in just a few words, I would say this. He lived a life that was faith and love in action. I think I could honestly put my hand on my heart, if there's any of my dad's colleagues here from industry, from his workplace, you would say, yes, yeah, recall Winston was quite religious. Yes, he was one of those born-again Christians. Yeah, remember that. Always had a badge on his lapel of a fish, that Christian symbol. Yes, I remember that. And that played out in his workplace with honesty and integrity and decency. He didn't like being late. He was diligent, and he was faithful, and he was incredible in his role there in the church and in our family. And Dawn and I have always felt through the years that we were his priority. In our mum's funeral, coming up to 15 years ago, she had requested a hymn that says, take my hands, the hymn says, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. In that third or fourth verse of that hymn, it says these words, take my hands, and let them move by the impulse of thy love. If that could sum up my dad, it's like as if he prayed that prayer even as a young boy, even as Uncle John has said, as a teenager, finding his personal faith over there in Holland. He would have said, take my hands now, from now on, and let them move at the impulse of thy love. Because your hands can only do what your heart tells them to do. They're not independent of our bodies. Our hands do things that our heart tells them to do. And so to conclude, I want to just use an object lesson. Dad always used object lessons. It's not a real one. That would be a giant one, wouldn't it? Dad always used object lessons. And there was a time when he went to preach in a church in Plymouth, and outside this church there was a lawned area, and there was a mass of dandelions, and he picked one of them, and he felt this kind of whisper in his heart that said, when you go into this church and when you go and speak, it's like you're doing this. And your job is to do this. And the seeds will land, and the rest is not your problem. Let the seeds land. You just do this. Wherever you go, when you're kind, you do this. When you speak to children and you've taught them a memory Bible verse or a little song that stays with them 40, 50 years ago, what you did was this. When you built Dawn a shop along with my granddad, who you heard earlier on is a brilliant carpenter. Dawn one Christmas had a sweet shop, and when he built that sweet shop for Dawn and bought her the little till, and then my mum filled up the little jars with Dolly mixtures and all these lovely sweets and the little paper bags, what Dad was doing for Dawn was this. Now, we all had to queue up to the shop, and Dad taught us how to be good customers in the shop and not to complain when things had run out or she was charging too much. What Dad was doing was this. He was teaching Dawn how to treat people in retail. And what she'd done all of her life, worked in retail. He was teaching Dawn how to be a good people person. And I remember a time when he took me, one of Dad's apprentices was killed in a motorcycle accident. He hit into an unlit skip and was killed outright. And I remember on multiple occasions going with Dad. Come with me, he said. We're going to visit this young man's parents. I must have only been about 9 or 10. Who really wants to go when you're 9 or 10 to comfort a bereaved family? But I used to always go off in the car with Dad wherever he went. And I can remember going to visit this husband and wife who had lost their only son. And I learned from the expert in those days. I was only thinking about it yesterday. That's how to do a pastoral visit. That's how to care for the bereaved. That's how to care for the traumatized. We listened, we diverted, we cared, and all of that time, my dad didn't ever say, now I'm going to be teaching you how to be nice to people. He never said that in the car. We never had a briefing. All the while, he was simply doing this. When you are kind, when you go the second mile, when you do all these things, what you're doing is you are sowing seeds, and he's put those seeds into the hearts of us and put those seeds into the heart of everyone who knew him. So in concluding, I want to say, Dad, your words, your actions, all that you modeled, all that you taught, all that you gave, you used to say this, you will never know. You will never know. You will never know. I want to say this, Dad, you will never know the impact that you have made in this world, but maybe one day you will. Maybe God is now saying to our Dad, well done, good and faithful servant. So honoring you, Dad, today is the easiest thing in the world to do. Living life without you, that's a whole different ballgame. What about us? What would Dad say to us now? What about you? Why don't you go and do the same? Why don't you go and live a life like that and make a difference in this world?